Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to the Celtic Way morning briefing. It is Tuesday, the 19th of August. We're just a day out from Celtic's massive Champions League qualifying round, first leg against FC Kairat. The build-up is here. I think we're all looking forward to the game tomorrow night. I'm joined this morning by Kevin McKenna. Kevin, how are you doing this morning?
Yeah, very good, Ryan. Looking forward to tomorrow night.
Yeah, I think everybody is. As much as it's a qualifying game, they'll still have the Champions League anthem blaring in the background. The crowd will still be expectant, hoping for another good European result. They've had quite a few. They've had quite a number of good European results over the past year or so. So you're hoping that they can do the same tomorrow and book their place in the league phase of the Champions League. That's where everybody wants to be. Today we're going to talk about a multitude of subjects, but I thought I would make it more general to begin with, Kevin, since you've not been on in a wee while. Thank you to everybody that's in the comments as well. We'll try and get as many of them up as we can throughout the show. Kevin, so there's been three wins, 2 wins in the Scottish Premiership against St Mirren and Aberdeen at home, away respectively, and then in the League Cup, Celtic easily dispatched of Falkirk 4-1. What have you made of the season so far? 3 wins out of 3 for Brendan Rodgers' side.
I suppose, yeah, you'll take your first 3 games and 3 wins, given that one of them is a fairly straightforward win at Pittodrie, which was doubly satisfying because of the Scottish Cup final result. And yeah, I mean, if anybody looked at any Aberdeen FC social media accounts over the last few months, they made the most out of that Scottish Cup final win, and fair enough to them. But it was good, I suppose, just to put them back in their place. And I know that Aberdeen, I think they've had only 5 wins in the last 29. If you
It's a really
include
bad run that they're on at the moment.
Last season, but listen, you'll take a win at Pittodrie. Against St Mirren, there was I saw quite a bit of negativity after the game, the St Mirren game, because we only scraped in inverted commas a 1-0 win. But come on, anybody that was there. I mean, we hit the woodwork 4 times. We created loads and loads of chances. We played some nice football against a St Mirren team, which in my opinion has improved year on year in the last 4 years, and I think they've kicked on again. St Mirren, I can assure you, will be a very tough team to defeat, home or away, for anybody this season. Actually, and the 4-1 win against Falkirk pleased me, because I remember this time last year we played Falkirk and beat them 5-2 in the League Cup, and
went behind twice as well in that game at home.
And I think Falkirk were ahead for quite a long time, because they play good football.
2 different spells, aye.
They play, and I know we had a kind of changed team then, but we had a changed team this time too. I'd like to see Falkirk do well, but we dispatched them. We dispatched them far more easily than we did at this time last year. So yeah, I'll take it. Not getting carried away. I know that at this stage of the season you don't expect to be 4 points ahead of the club to be your closest rivals, but we've still got them at Ibrox in a couple of weeks. So yeah, I mean, I know we can talk about transfer stuff or the lack of it later on, but on paper, yeah, you have to be pleased with the start.
Yeah, because other teams are faltering around Celtic, and Celtic are just keeping on the straight and narrow. They've got 3 wins out of 3 in all competitions, hopefully making it 4 wins out of 4 after tomorrow night. I think there's a lot of excitement in the air about that game against FC Kairat, despite the lack of transfers, as you speak about. Celtic have until 11 p.m. this evening or tonight to register 2 additional players for the Champions League if they so choose to do so. At this moment in time, Kevin, I don't know about you, but I'm really doubting that'll take place, just given the lack of any real substance regarding potential incomings at this moment in time. For this stage of the season, I don't know about you, but I'm quite surprised at the lack of chat around, tangible links to players at the moment, but there doesn't seem to be anything. So it seems right now as if, and Brendan Rodgers has relayed this message the past couple of press conferences, that if it is to be this squad, then that's what they're going with for the Champions League tie, and that would seem to be the case, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it's hugely disappointing, and it's mystifying, to the point of being insulting to the Celtic support. That I mean, we've known we were going to be seeded, and we've known that we needed to play a qualifier since about March, I think, because Scotland's coefficient had dropped. But we also knew that we were going to be seeded, and you just, in the absence of any communication from the club, because the club, let's face it, Celtic treat their fans with contempt in terms of communication. And in the absence of anything from them, one way or another, you begin to speculate, which is, along the lines of knowing that we were seeded. Do we just wait until we get into the Champions League proper? Knowing that the sort of players that Rangers would be buying wouldn't really be in the same ballpark as our players if we were going into the transfer market, if there's this kind of complacency. I mean, that might be unfair, but we don't know, because, you get nothing from the club, no indication one way or another. But the majority, most fans know we've got a lot of money in the bank. There's no point in having all that money if it's not doing anything. And we're at this unbelievable stage where we're about to embark on probably the most important game or two games that we will play this season, and the squad is noticeably weaker than the one which finished last season. I don't think there's any other club across the world. I'm talking about a club that would expect to be winning trophies across the world, where that applies to, where they've gone into a new season with a squad that they know and we know is weaker, and lighter in several key positions than the one which finished the previous season. It's either a dereliction of responsibility, or it's just pure arrogance, and we can do what we like. But then again, what does that say about the relationship between Brendan Rodgers and the board of directors? And I know, listen, I know there are certain sections of the press who love to drive a wedge, between the fans, the club, and also the appearance of a wedge between Brendan Rodgers and the directors. But in the absence of any communication, that's going to happen.
Yeah, I know it's such a difficult situation just now, and it's quite annoying as well when I remember when Brendan Rodgers came back to the club in 2023, he was told and he was convinced that the way that Celtic did their business had changed. That was in his first interview, I remember, with Celtic TV. He said that the way in which Celtic do their business has changed, and it's changed for the better, and they've modernised certain things. The following summer, the head of recruitment was out the door because it wasn't working under Brendan Rodgers. So, yeah, there's a real lack of recruitment at the moment, especially ahead of that massive game tomorrow night. But I don't know about you, but I feel as if the supporters have separated the two just now. I feel as if everybody's laser focused on the Champions League qualifier. Yes, there is a little bit of grumbling online, and I get that, totally understand that. People are well within their rights to moan and groan about the lack of signings, because it feels as if we're all doing it just now. But there's the bigger picture, isn't there? And that the Champions League is the bigger picture. And there's so many of those players who thrived for Celtic last season in the Champions League that are still there, that are still looking to get back to the so-called promised land of European football. So I guess my question to you before we talk about the individual that's been linked with the club, do you back those players to do the business if nobody else is to come in against Kairat?
I mean, it's difficult to say. On paper, we're something like nearly 300 places ahead of Kairat. However, we played opposition from Kazakhstan twice before, and one of them was Shakhtar Karagandhi.
Played Astana twice in 2 years as well.
So we were beaten 2-0 away by Shakhtar Karagandhi and won 3-0. With a
quick trivia question: do you remember who made his debut that night for Celtic against Karagandhi?
No.
Virgil van Dijk. Virgil van Dijk made his debut for Celtic that night in Karagandhi. Wow. Incredible that.
I remember being there. It was great. And then Astana, the first time we played Astana, we drew 1 each out there, and we should have comfortably dispatched them in the second leg, but we were hanging on because it was 2-1 getting into the last quarter of the game, and that the old away goals rule still applied then. And then we played Astana again, thumped them 5-0 at Parkhead, and within
I still remember that game.
We were 3-0 down, weren't we? We were 3-0 down in the first half an hour or so, and you're thinking, oh no, are we going to get down in history as the victims of the most unlikely overturning of a first leg deficit? And we ended up being beaten 4-3. So this game isn't going to be easy. And we're going into it with we've got a centre forward who needs a goal, and he doesn't really have a backup because Kenny is he's not there yet, I don't think. The midfield is very strong. The defence looks kind of settled, although, I'm not sure if Scales and Trusty are the long-term answer. We need Adam Ida to step up and get a goal. We need him to score tomorrow. We need him to score at the weekend because I want him getting into going to Ibrox with a goal or two under his belt. If he doesn't, then you're looking at, one option might have been playing Dyson Maeda through the centre, but who do you play out left? Because we don't have that option, and this is the neglect right there. We don't have options here. It's an opportunity for one or two players who had a sluggish start. Ideal opportunity to play a beatable team in a very important Champions League qualifier and make a statement. But we just shouldn't be in this position. Kairat are not. They're not as weak as they would appear in paper. The league they come from is not as weak as the statistics would suggest. If you look at the performance of clubs from that region, in Europe, they get better and better every year. Mm-hmm. Notwithstanding, there's also the fact of 10,000 mile round trip.
Something like that. I think the number gets bigger every time I look at it.
Is that right? I should have checked that, shouldn't have. It's a massive game for Celtic, and we've had some good experiences at this stage before. I'm thinking, Shakhtar Karagandhi was one, Spartak Moscow on penalties in the Strachan era. But my God, we've also stumbled at this stage. Cluj, AEK Athens, to name but a
Maribor,
few. Maribor, Legia Warsaw,
Ferencvaros. You could name them.
nothing, there's no guarantees here. And in those previous years, in those years where we've, where we've been put out, that's with squads that had been strengthened. This one hasn't. Yeah, I mean, Kieran Tierney. That's it has been strengthened. Of course, it has with Kieran Tierney. But, we had that lined up in January, and we don't have cover for him. And we know that there's a likelihood that at some point, Kieran's going to have an injury break, because that's been the pattern of his career over the last few years. I mean, I hope to God, no. But again, get into this with a squad that doesn't include a backup left back, that doesn't include another wing option, that doesn't include another centre forward option. It's just sheer and utter neglect. It's unprofessional, and it's small club stuff. And I know, I hear what you're saying, that the fans are now just laser focused in this, and they've separated that. I would go further. I would say that the fans have just given up even getting angry about this. They know when they're being shafted.
There's a bit of apathy in there.
Yeah, it's like, well, what's the point? We've made all these points. We know that we get treated with contempt. Nobody tells us anything. We know we've got all this money in the bank. We know that Brendan Rodgers said, as you mentioned, 2 years ago, the recruitment model had changed, and yet here we are, and we've already got speculation about his future. We've got speculation as along the lines of, do certain people in the Celtic board want to sicken him, to the extent that he does another roar halfway through the season. This time he would have the fans would be much more understanding of that, knowing what's happened. And the fact we're speculating about a last minute swoop for a 38-year-old tells you everything you need to know. This is desperate stuff.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to actually get on and touch on, because we did base the thumbnail about Jamie Vardy today. Now, there was a story that came out yesterday in a number of media sources on a potential move for the 38-year-old striker. Obviously, Brendan Rodgers knows him so well from their time at Leicester City, when Brendan Rodgers was the manager from 2019 to 2023. He scored 200 goals in 500 appearances for Leicester. Everybody knows who Jamie Vardy is, ex-England international. Pretty much a prolific goal scorer for essentially the whole time in his Premier League career since making that step up. I remember he was playing lower league. I think he was playing non-league, and then he moved to Fleetwood. He had a good season, then moved to Leicester in the Championship, then made that jump from Leicester in the Championship to Leicester in the Premier League, and became an England international. He was obviously the talisman in that 2015-2016 English Premier League win under Claudio Ranieri, which I don't think will ever be topped in terms of shock factor, in terms of amazement at how a squad of players just resonated with a manager, and they all worked together to win the league and shock the rest of the footballing world, basically. But he has been linked with a move to Celtic. There's quotes from a source saying that Jamie Vardy has his heart set on a move to Celtic. He says he's desperate to join Brendan Rodgers' side. He's been a free agent since leaving Leicester at the end of the season. He's also been linked with the likes of Brentford in the Premier League, West Bromwich Albion in the Championship, and Championship newcomers Wrexham as well. Everybody knows about Jamie Vardy, Kevin, but what is your opinion on this move? And as you mentioned, does it smack of desperation for a free transfer that could have been potentially signed in June, July time?
First of all, I've got to say, Jamie Vardy is an iconic footballer.
Yeah, he's a Premier League legend.
He's such an impressive footballer. And I know, yeah, it smacks of as I said, it smacks of desperation. We shouldn't be in a position where, with less than a day before, we're thinking about bringing him in. A player of that ability, that status, if you're thinking about him, he should have been across our radar a few months ago, and he could have been brought in to, familiarise himself with a couple of months ago, familiarise himself with the Celtic system. And saying that, I don't think you'll see a fitter looking 38-year-old in playing senior football. He's as fit as a butcher's dog. See if you look at footage of him from last season, even just the last few months of last season, when he'd already said, he's going to be going, and you compare it with footage from 2016, when he was the Player of the Year. He was English Football Writers' Player of the Year in 2016. There's no difference. He doesn't look as if he's lost any pace, any speed whatsoever. If Celtic sign Jamie Vardy, he will score a barrel load. He can't not score. His speed takes him into, and not just his physical speed, but his speed of thought takes him into killer positions. And he scores, when he gets into those positions, he scores more often than he misses. And he would score a lot of goals for us. And he's still, I would say, he's still got a season, perhaps even 2 seasons left in him. Nor is he prone to injury, because he's strong. So yeah, I would like to
200 goals in 500 games. That's a goal every
it's incredible
2 games.
At that level, and having lifted his game every season, to cope with the higher demands that he was playing, the higher quality players he was playing against, says a lot to his sense of character, the belief that he has in himself.
Somebody's made a point in the comment. Somebody's made a point in the comments, and I agree with this. About me, I wouldn't use the word horribleness, but I would use the word character and a wee bit of dig. And I think Celtic, in my opinion, and I just wanted to bring this up, and I won't, and I'll give you your response to this, but I'll allow you your response to this. But maybe the forward line's a bit too nice at the moment.
Yeah.
Whereas, Jamie Vardy has been known for riling up defences, riling up opposition supporters. That mean streak in him. Could that be something that could potentially play a factor in his move if he was to move to the club?
100%. Yeah, character's one way of putting it. He's got attitude. Right, he's hard. If he was playing against us, we would hate him. It's almost like, having come up the hard way, having taken all the knocks earlier in his career, not really having made a name for himself until, he played several years amateur or lower division football. It's almost like I'm going to wring every ounce I can out of this career, and I do not give a toss who I upset. And I love it. And we do need a bit of that. And I think it would also rub off on the team. Maybe it's just, I don't know what it is, but we are a bit too nice. And some of it, sometimes you see our Japanese players, when they've been involved in a robust challenge with a member of the opposition, and they want to get down and pat their heads, ruffle their hair. I saw the wee Kyogo was at it again with Birmingham the other night. And you're like,
he started well.
I love you all, right? But going to stop acting the social worker, right? Whenever your opponent goes to the ground, right? Because he's not going to do the same back to you. You won't get Jamie Vardy stooping over a player that he's just, banjoed, inquiring after his health and making sure, getting his address to see if he can send him a get well card.
No, I know it's an interesting one, and as I say, it's only reports that have came out. There's nothing, solid at the moment, but it would seem that from those quotes from that inside source that Jamie Vardy would prefer a move to Celtic. Now, he's a free agent. He can go to wherever he wants, go to the highest bidder, go to the club that fits him the most.
It's the
I just
wages,
think out
though,
of the teams
Ryan.
that have been...
It's the wages. You know, he would still have been approaching a six-figure sum every week with Leicester. Know how fit he is, and the fact that there's at least one Premiership side who still, who are believed to be interested in him. Is it worth breaking your disciplined wage structure for a 38-year-old?
I've got to be honest, Kevin. I think if he was joining Celtic, he would need to take a pay cut because and that would I think he's probably made his money in his career. His loyalty to Leicester will have paid off in his bank balance. He'll have had endorsements as well after his title win. He was an England international. By all accounts, I think he's made his money in the game now, and obviously he could go abroad and make more money, but I think he wants to stay in Britain and see out the rest of his career, and maybe he just wants some silverware. And out of the teams that have been linked, apart from maybe Wrexham if they win the championship, which looks unlikely given the first couple of games of the season, Celtic are the only team that can really win silverware out of the teams that are mentioned. So that could be a big caveat for him. It's all about legacy, and I think he'll want that. I just want to quickly move on to the quotes that the quotes that Luke McCowan gave a couple of days ago that have resurfaced, and I don't know about you, Kevin. I really like to hear this from Luke McCowan. The fact that as much as it's important to have that passion in players on the pitch, it's also good to have some supporters on the pitch and in and around the dressing room, because they understand what it means to play for Celtic and what the fans go through when supporting the club. Because Luke McCowan has done that himself. There's pictures online that have resurfaced of him in I think it was the 2003-2004 kit from about 20-21 years ago. So it shows that he's been there long term, and he's been a Celtic fan since the very start of his life, basically. He was talking about playing in Europe. He said it's all about playing in Europe, which is one of the many reasons you can't wait to play for Celtic. You want the chance to put on a performance against top opposition. It's a dream for me to play in Europe for Celtic. Now it's about doing it again this year. Walking out in the Allianz Arena was special for me. Sadly, I didn't get on the pitch, but just walking out and hearing the people in the stands and seeing the level of opposition was special. To see your team put on that performance was great, and we're looking to do the same again. The motivation now is to get back to that level. It's a tough ask to get through the qualifiers. You have to prove you want it more, and I'm sure we can do that. He then talked about those pictures that resurfaced of him in the Celtic top, saying he was about 5 or 6, and it was the first top I remember wanting to wear. I had Celtic trackies, but that's the first top I remember, especially with that team. I had DVDs of that team as well, and then when I started playing football, it was a proper obsession. I was a bit young to watch the games, but as I got older, I got the DVD The Road to Seville. I probably not watched it in 10 years, but it was incredible, some of the places they went and got results. He then went on to speak about the supporters making the journey, and how his dad, his granddad and his uncle would all do away trips as well. Maybe not as far as Kazakhstan, he admitted, but they would do trips around the world supporting their team. It's good to hear that from Luke McCowan, and it's good that somebody like that is in the dressing room that will be telling the players that are maybe unfamiliar with what it means to play for Celtic just how important it is, and the lengths that the fans go to.
Yeah, it's a big season for Luke McCowan, and yeah, it's good. It's always good to have someone in the team that the fans can truly identify with, that we know truly gets it, and it's we've also got Kieran Tierney, who falls into that category as well.
Tony Ralston, Cal McGregor and James Forrest. It's a good group.
Yeah. So it's good to have that. That's a good nucleus of Scots, most of whom were boyhood Celtic supporters. It does add an extra dynamic into the dressing room, I hesitate to say it kind of adds an extra kind of level of intensity, because you would hope that these professionals, should have an intensity all the time, but intensity also works on an emotional level, and Celtic's model, the way that the model of European player trading is at the moment, means that when we get a very good overseas player, or one who becomes or develops into that, we know that the maximum we're ever going to have of them is 2-3 years. And you can't really get too attached to them, because you just know they'll go. If they're really good, they become icons. And then as soon as that happens, they go. So it's good to have people like those five to maintain that kind of long-term bond with the Celtic supporters. And McCowan, he gives everything, and he looks after himself. He's not going to let you down. He's not got everything, but I think he reminds me in some ways of Paul Lambert. When we bought Paul Lambert from Borussia Dortmund, Paul Lambert was an unfussy player, but my God, he knew what his role was in the team, and he carried it out to perfection. He knew the areas of the park where he could be most effective. He didn't stray into areas that were going to impinge on another player's territory or leave him isolated. There's a reason why he was in Borussia Dortmund's only European Cup winning team in 1997, amongst some of the best players in Germany, because he could do that job, and he did it for us. And Luke McCowan has an element of that. He's got goals in him. He's fit. He gets up and down the park. I'd like to see the Celtic coaching staff work on his distribution a little bit more under pressure. But you could say that about several players. I'm quite happy with the way he's progressed so far, and it's as you said, it's always good to hear a player like that speak our language, so to speak.
Yeah, but Tony and I got the chance to speak to Luke McCowan at Fir Park, and it's legit. Like, whatever people say about him being, a bona fide Celtic supporter, Celtic diehard, it's legit. He bleeds Celtic, to be honest with you. So it's great to see, and it's great to have somebody in the team like that understands what the supporters are going through.
He's a good lad. He's got discipline as well. He's got this. Sometimes when you've got that, and you've got that emotional connection to Celtic. I'm thinking about, for instance, a player like maybe Johnny Doyle, who would run through a brick wall for Celtic, God rest him. But sometimes that emotional passion for the club and that emotional connection got him into situations that he should have probably just stepped away from. But Luke McCowan looks to me as if he's got a lot of discipline as well. He knows how to conserve that emotional energy and that intensity. He doesn't get himself involved in stupid challenges, talking back, retaliation, dissent. He gets on with it. I wish him all the best. I want a lot of good things to happen to that lad.
Yeah, and good things are happening to him because he's at the team that he supports, and he's playing for the team that he supports as well. So fingers crossed he can make even more of an impact this season. He's already scored the winner against St Mirren, so he started his season well. Thought he looked bright against Falkirk too. So good start to the season for Luke McCowan. The last sort of news story that I want to touch upon before we head off today is something that came out last evening, but I put it up on the site this morning before I came on live here. So as you'll be aware of, Kevin, Celtic or Scottish teams can be part of cooperation agreements for loan deals. It allows the flexibility of youth players, under 21 players, to move between clubs and get regular game time, whether that be at their parent club or at one of the agreement clubs that the partnership entails. Celtic already have one in Ayr United, who are managed by Scott Brown. They've got Kyle Ewer and Jude Bonner at the club, so those two can go to and from Celtic and Ayr in Somerset Park to get game time. But it would seem as if Celtic are looking for a suitor in League One as well, which has been orchestrated by the player pathway manager Sean Maloney. Sean Maloney's been part of a lot of these talks. According to sources, he's really making pathways for the youth players to go to other teams, both in the Championship, League One and League Two potentially. But the League One club is Inverness Caledonian Thistle, and their interim chief executive is actually a name that will be familiar to many people. Charlie Christie, who's the interim chief executive, he was talking to the Inverness Courier about chats between Celtic, Sean Maloney and Inverness Cali Thistle over an agreement between the two sides. He said, we've been offered it by 2 or 3 clubs regarding the cooperation agreement. Sean Maloney, who's the player pathway manager, drove up from Glasgow and said to me that they had done their data on the way that Cali Thistle play. He said that we are only one of 2 clubs in League One that they would put players to, and that is a compliment to Scott Kelleher. Celtic is one that we are looking at. A club that have been going through a little bit of turmoil in recent years, I think it's fair to say, but that could be a good move for all parties if Celtic are to get involved with that and send players to Inverness.
Yeah, you want Inverness to be thriving anyway, because they're such an iconic club in the Highlands, the Scottish Highlands. They were like they kind of lit up the pathway for other Highland League clubs to get into the senior leagues. And yeah, they've had a lot of problems recently, but I'd sense that there's a little bit of stability has been brought in, having Charlie Christie Senior. Charlie Christie as the interim CEO is good for Inverness. It's good for their fans, and if we were to do a deal along those lines with them, it's good for us because Charlie Christie, I think in 87, 88, from Inverness, we took a bit of a punt on him, and he played a few games for us, but didn't really establish himself. I'd have liked him. I remember watching him then, and I'd have liked to have seen him been given more games. But he was coming into a very good team, a very good squad, which won the double, 87, 88. But he's a bright man. He's a thinker. He's always been articulate. And you can see that in the way that Ryan Christie handles himself with the media on the park. So yeah, if we're going to for these sorts of tie-ups, then Inverness Cali is it's a big club. They will get back if they can get their organisation sorted out. They'll be knocking in the door of the top league in due course. They've got a good stadium, got excellent playing facilities, which would also come into Celtic's thinking if they want their players to kind of develop a little bit more. At the very least, you're looking for a stadium and a playable surface, which can't really be said for too many other teams, including 3 and unforgivably in our league.
Yeah, 25% of the league, which isn't great. Thankfully, we've got that.
Isn't it?
Thankfully, that rule's coming in at the end of the season, which means that grass pitches have to be in the top league, which is good news, I would say, for both the players and the supporters going to the games as well. Kevin, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on this morning. Good to chat about things. Good to get ready for the game against Kairat tomorrow. I'll just ask for a quick prediction from you before we head off. How do you see tomorrow going?
Well, not being an authority on the Kazakhstan leagues, I would say I'd be happy with a 2 or 3 goal win. 2-0 might seem a bit pernickety, but 2-0 would do me, because I think Celtic are capable of scoring away from home. The way that Celtic played, as we saw last season, we can score away from home. I think it's important that we don't lose any goals. So I know it might seem a bit conservative. I'll go for 2-0.
Fair enough.
Celtic.
Fair enough. Yeah, of course, Celtic 2-0. 2-0 to Kai, that would be a bit of a disaster. Would be dreadful. But fingers crossed that can be the case and Celtic get a win in the first leg. We'll be back tomorrow at the same time to discuss all things Celtic versus Kyra as the big day approaches. We'll also be live pre and post match tomorrow, live from Celtic Park. I'll be at Celtic Park to discuss the team news and then the post match reaction. Until then, guys, have a very enjoyable rest of your Tuesday, and we'll see you all tomorrow.